Welcome to today's episode of The Human Edge. My guest is Maugé. Mia's got an incredible story to tell. For years, not seeing herself represented in the beauty and fashion industry. Now, she's on 30-foot billboards. She's model lingerie for M&S. She has appeared in Disney's live-action The Little Mermaid film. There's so much gold, there's so much value in today's episode. For me, especially around overcoming fears, overcoming limiting beliefs. When Mia was first asked to model, especially for M&S, she was absolutely terrified. Imposter syndrome was going crazy in her mind. She was shaking so much she couldn't even bring a glass of water to her lips. But she got through. Not only did she get through, but she absolutely thrived. And she's a role model for men and women, young and old, today. She talks a lot, really eloquently, about working with purpose. And it's purpose, and she can see the thread of working purposefully that runs throughout her life. So it was a fantastic conversation. I hope you enjoy listening or watching. And if you like the episode, please share it with everybody you know. Please subscribe. It will be massively helpful. Thank you. One of the questions I definitely want to ask you is about that thing that you say on your website about, just letting go. The battle with aging was almost and there's something about that letting go and the surrender and the experience you had with that shoot where you just I'm just gonna
just go with it. It was the whole thing with aging really came with the having dyed my hair dark for almost 20 years. It wasn't even about covering the grays, it was about covering my age. That's what it was. So this then kind of releasing that and having that weight lifted just led to this whole kind of transformation in terms of my thinking and my mindset.
Yeah, and it's when I look at you, I see this almost like a trademark. That's one of the things that kind of defines your look.
I have to say as well, I wouldn't be doing what I do now if I hadn't taken that plunge in 2016. I definitely, and it has really positive impact on a daily basis. I mean, Carmen will tell you, like just walking down the road, the loveliest people will just stop me. And so having that daily sort of interaction with people, I think definitely it just feeds positivity in you.
And are they stopping you because of your hair?
100%. I mean, so obviously I get recognised now. So that's a different interaction. People that follow me on Instagram will see me in the street now, but there are obviously lots of people that don't, and that's just a lovely thing to just come up and pay somebody a compliment. And usually, more often than not, it's young women.
Is it?
Which is lovely.
Okay. That's interesting.
Yeah.
And what do they say when they come
just
up
I
to you?
love your hair. I love your hair. Is it natural? It's so funny. The irony is that I never got asked, do you dye your hair, when I did dye my hair, and now that I don't, I get asked that all the time.
And I'm thinking about my wife and many of the women I know who dye their hair.
I think it's just I think there's a difference. Some people dye their hair just because they prefer the colour of the dye, and that's perfectly fine, because that's not messing with any kind of inner turmoil. So for me, it was really, I loved the colour, but I just didn't like what it stood for. For me, in my mind at that time, it was irrelevance and past your sell by date, past your shelf life, all of that.
But what did the dyeing or the not dyeing for you stand for?
So dyeing my hair for, like I said, almost 20 years. I started just after I had my second daughter, when I was 33-ish, around about then, and I stopped at 50. And I So 17 years, 18 years, something
Yeah.
like that. And I did it just simply because for me it was a symbol of, I was worried about how society would view me. It really wasn't about aesthetics, because I actually really liked silver hair, and I could see it on somebody else and be like, oh, that's so beautiful.
Yeah.
And I'll do it one day. Maybe I had 45 in my mind. I'd stop dyeing it when I'm 45. And then 45 came and went, and at that time I was single as well, and it was like, how do you navigate dating with grey hair? To me, at that time, at that point in time, it just seemed too difficult. I just didn't think anybody would find it attractive. So I had that. And yeah, my hair has always been like, something that I'd enjoyed as well. So, but it was just my inner ageism. So my own, which I didn't realise until I actually went through the process, and there was this unravelling and this questioning. I never challenged societal ageism. You just dyed your hair, and that's what you did. As soon as you saw greys, you covered it up. All the ads say, 100% grey coverage, and you just don't question it, and you just go ahead and do it. And like I was saying before, if you dye it because you prefer the colour in the bottle to the colour that grows naturally from your head, that's one thing. You're just making yourself feel good.
Yeah.
I wasn't doing that. I was really fearful of how I'd be perceived in the workplace. I was working with a young team who didn't know my age, and I was in turmoil. I was in my 40s, worrying about I was in publishing before, and that was all changing. It was all being digitised, and I kind of felt like I was being elbowed out. And then to throw grey hair in the mix of that just felt like it's over, it's game over.
Yeah. So were you saying then the perception that you were worried about other people's perception of yourself, but actually it was your own perception of yourself that was holding you back?
So it was my beliefs around how society would view me. That's what it was. It was that I would be seen to be deemed old, too old, over the hill, irrelevant, invisible, all those things that I didn't want to be. Yes.
And do you think? It feels to me that it's, from a societal perspective, it's harder for women aging than it is for men.
I was just going to say, how has it been for you? Did you have any? No,
I like the grey.
It's the whole silver fox thing as well. So it's definitely more difficult for women. Women, there's a pressure for us to remain desirable. You are taught you have to be youthful. Beauty is somehow intrinsically linked with youth. The fountain of youth and all of this. But that pressure is very much on women, and I think dating as well, you're up against it with men. If there are men your age that are single, quite often they're looking for younger women, so you've got that as well. So it's difficult to navigate, and I can completely relate to women that are still going through that, and I have a lot of them message me on Instagram as well. Really struggling. Some of them are really struggling with it, just approaching 40. And I remember my 40th birthday, that was the first birthday I didn't want to celebrate. It felt so old to me. And I was already well into dyeing my hair, addicted to dyeing my hair at that point. Anyway, once I stopped in 2016, when I decided to stop, there was just this just unexpected tussle with my own inner ageism, just questioning that, but also realising why was I doing this? Why was I? Society. I've been taught this not just by society, but also by my mum. My mum didn't talk about her age with her. She didn't know her mother's age when her mother passed away.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was like this privacy. There's that saying, "Never ask a woman her age." Ridiculous things like that. Just little messaging that you're taught from young. All the old characters in fairy tales are witches and ugly, and apart from the fairy godmother who's cuddly, and but it's one or the other. It's never seen to be something desirable or aspirational.
The beautiful people in those Disney films are young. So it's just taught to us, and it's unpacking all of that, and that's what happened
once I stopped dyeing my hair, and it was a very difficult process.
Yeah.
I felt really unattractive for 2 years when it was growing out, and very alone as well. And people, friends and family, I had no support. Everybody just thought I was having a midlife crisis and not taking care of myself.
Yeah.
My daughters were my only support. It was really through them. It was them pressuring me to stop dyeing my hair as well that made me actually go for it.
Yeah.
So,
And in those 2 years, so your daughters knew what was happening and knew why you were doing it.
yeah, and was
Did the kind of the wider family and friends?
no,
You didn't tell them.
most of them didn't say anything as well.
Yeah.
They'd kind of talk to me whilst looking at my roots,
Okay.
you know, but no, didn't say very much.
Yeah.
I think people just thought I was having, and I was menopausal. I was having a rough time. So yeah, I think they just thought it was part and parcel of that.
Yeah. And so on your website, you talk about letting go of the battle against getting old. When did that happen, and what exactly do you mean by letting go?
That I came up with that expression on social media, on my Instagram account. And it really was relating. It was just relating to stopping dyeing my hair. It came from that. When I ditched the dye, as I say, there was this unexpected kind of transformation that happened with my mindset. I was just, the feeling of just being so authentic with my age and just saying, look, this is me, this is what grows naturally from my head, had such an impact just outside, once it was fully grown, outside of my home. People, as I said earlier, were stopping me in the street. I got stopped by a casting agent, and suddenly there was this whole, teetering on this whole new kind of life.
And I can imagine how liberating it was for you.
It was.
In the end, once you
once I got through that.
process.
Once I got through the process, I loved it. I loved it. There was just no reference. Like, nobody else was doing it at that time.
Yeah.
There was no celebrities. No, do you know what I mean? Now it's very different. At that time, it was a really radical thing to do.
Yeah.
And people thought I was brave. And I found the whole dating thing, I needn't have worried about that because I'm not found Mr. Right yet, but men find it attractive. In that, I've been told, it's more than the aesthetics. It was because at that time it was seen to be a brave thing to do, and I really hope that it won't be in time, that it won't be seen to be brave, but it was back then.
But
people are like, wow.
I mean, for me, it's also a kind of a symbolic, right? You had this energy, the spirit shining through. This was the physical representation of it, but I can imagine for men and for people stopping you in the street, there's a glow about you.
Yes, right? Yeah. Oh, that sounds nice. I'd like to think that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I do think so. So for me, I'm turning 50 in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, congratulations.
Thank you. And I was writing about this on LinkedIn recently, which is I'm having more fun professionally than I've ever had, in my life before. And it's so exciting. It's so creative. And you were saying before about people having crises in their 40s. Yeah. For me, life is kind of getting better and better and better.
Yeah.
So when you're talking with other people of the same kind of age who are worried about what the next decade holds for them, what advice do you give?
I just think we need to stop thinking about the years and maybe think of the years as levels. Like, if you think of it as levels, you're just getting better and better with each level. So I'll be in my 59th level this year, the end of this year, and everything that I've learned along the way is just coming into fruition now. Like, all the work that I've done, the fruits of my labour over the last however many decades is coming into fruition. This is honestly the 50s. Had I known in my 40s might have been a lot more fun than they were. Had I known what I know now, or had I changed my mindset. It's not really what I know, it's really about realising and recognising and valuing all of that, everything that you bring from having lived a long time. Also gratitude, like just being grateful for still being here. I lost two dear friends in my 40s. And that didn't even wake me up at the time that, you know, God, life is fragile and precious, because I was so caught up in this whole thing about, you know, aging and how the doom and gloom of it all. If you've taken care of yourself, if you begin to take care of yourself, it's never too late to do that. And you have ownership and empowerment and agency over your, you know, how you feel and how your health and your fitness. I think with that and the experience that we've got, these can be the best, just optimizing on the best years of your life. They really can be. You've got, if you've got children, they're more likely grown up. If you've got a mortgage, that's you're mortgage free. So it's a time where you've got a bit of financial freedom, where you can step back a little bit and think about what you want to do. Whether that's channeling into, you might have been working for a long time doing a job that you're not that happy doing, you can channel into your creative side and pivot. You've got more time as well to do that because your kids are independent. This is my own personal experience. So I was able to pull back and take some time for me and assess and think about actually what was important to me, not necessarily what I wanted to do, but just what was important to me.
I'm curious, so you've got daughters of your own, two daughters. How have they seen you change over the last 5-10 years?
I mean, I think I do get the odd, I'm so proud of you moment from them. I think they're really over the whole, the whole exposure thing, like seeing their mum. I don't think that's I think at the beginning that was exciting for them. They're not neither of them are on social media, so they're not really invested in it in that way. I think they would say I haven't changed. I'd like to think they'd say that.
You're still mum.
Yeah, and I'm still there, and I do another thing that you don't think about when you're possibly approaching midlife is the joy of having adult children. I remember in my 40s feeling like I was losing everything. I was losing my youth. I was losing my kids. You know, those chubby little hands that reach out to hold yours when you cross the road. And there was this kind of mourning, almost like a grief that I was feeling. Just they were growing up, they were teenagers, and I kind of didn't recognise them so much, couldn't interact with them in the same way. So that there was just a sense of loss. And then now with them as adults, I just have the best time with them, and it's really something that parents can look forward to. Is this period in time when they're independent? They're my best travel buddies because we can share a room comfortably, and you know we've lived together before, so it's like there's just this real kind of familiarity and comfort in having adult children. It's and also just having them challenge you, seeing them being autonomous, and it's just a joy. And something I didn't know was so joyful. My relationship with my mum is not what my relationship is with my kids, so I didn't really have a reference. So for me, it was one of the biggest surprises about this time in life.
That resonates with me, kind of from the other side of the coin. So my kids are still quite young. They're 12 and 9. But I have a wonderful relationship with my own parents. My dad's in his early 80s now, mum in her mid 70s. And we talk most days. And so kind of what you're saying about the relationship you have with your daughter, I feel like I have that experience with my parents.
Well, I'm sure that will continue with your daughter. Is it a boy and a girl you've got?
That's right. I hope so very much.
Well, you've had that experience, so yourself. So and my dad passed, so I was very close to him, and I lost him when I was 18. So it didn't really.
You didn't have the opportunity.
Exactly.
I want to talk about the last 5-10 years because there's a lot to cover, but I'm also interested in what the next 10 years holds. Maybe 10 years is kind of too big a time period to think about, but in terms of how you envision the next few years, what does that look like?
I'll be honest, this whole thing, this has all happened in the last 4 years, this whole shift, and well, I guess I guess since the age of 50, but in terms of career-wise, it's happened for over the last 4 years. And none of it has been planned. None of it has been orchestrated. And to this day, my social media is not there's no strategy. So I'm just going to continue doing what I do, which is just being visible and vocal and see where it takes me. I'd like to broaden the platforms that I use in order to create visibility and awareness around ageism, particularly, but also age inclusivity. Thankfully, from social media, I've been booked as a public speaker, like on panels. So I do panel talks, which I love, which is massively out of my comfort zone. I've done a podcast, which I'm doing now, again, massively out of my comfort zone. But it's important to me that what I do really has purpose. So I want to be heard. So podcasts, possibly on the horizon.
Writing, you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I'd like to write more for publications, for magazines and websites and stuff. Writing has always been a common theme throughout my career.
There's definitely a book. There's definitely a book in there.
I was scouted by a literary agent, and I've started. There's a book proposal floating around at the moment. So
there's
we'll see.
there's a ton of value in your story. I can definitely see that.
Thank you. I think that would be a really good outlet for me as well. I'd enjoy it. It might take me a little while, but
But coming back to the answer to the question, I really like that there's no master plan. We talked before about surrendering to age.
Yes.
We're talking a little bit about the M&S shoot and how you needed to let it all go. And there's something about that spirit of freedom in how you're thinking about the next few years.
Yeah, I feel, and also just an approach, just saying yes more as well, like something, just being open and identifying, opportunities, I suppose, in terms of opportunities to spread. I sound a bit religious to spread the message.
Spread the word.
No, but exactly. But just wanting to get it out far and wide. I've just been to New York, and I'm about to sign with an American agency out there, and I think they're not as far ahead as we are with this type of activism. So that would be exciting to go over there.
There's a real opportunity there.
Yeah. And again, that came via Instagram. Instagram has been very good to me, I have to say. I've been fortunate.
So let's talk about that. And it was almost as if there was an overnight shift. You had your profile on private, and then you made a decision to go public, if I can put it like that. So I suppose a couple of related questions. Why had you been in private mode for so long? And then what was it what was the trigger for you to say, okay, I want to...
So I was in private mode because I've never really been a consumer on social media. It's always just been about connecting with family and friends and sharing with family and friends. And so that's why I was in private mode. Sorry, I'm going to blow my nose. No So my Instagram had always been about just sharing with family and friends. And then it was 2020. I'd been working at Notting Hill Carnival since 2018. I was brought on board specifically to challenge the negative narrative within the media, the unfair negative narrative within the media. My job was Director of PR and Comms. They had no social media presence whatsoever, very small team. So I was responsible for creating the persona for Carnival, creating the social media handles and everything, and the content. And I learned masses from that experience. I'd never done that before. I was brought in because I have a history of Carnival. My dad was one of the Trinidadian people that settled in the community and was there at its organic inception in the mid-60s. So I've always been involved with Carnival and the arts. So I was approached to do that dream job because I've always hated how it's been kicked around by the media unfairly since the negative goings on in the 80s, which just wasn't, it's one of the most significant cultural events, if not the most, in terms of in Europe, in terms of Caribbean community and representation. Anyway, so I was brought on board to do that, and that experience taught me how powerful social media is, because I had a very successful time with them, and I managed to get an info band for Carnival on the BT Tower. I did a brand collaboration with Samsung, and I got the community involved, and we had the digital display at Piccadilly Circus. So it was really, loved my job. Cried when I left in 2021. Anyway, I learned from that the power of social media. And during lockdown, we had virtual Carnival, so I was working from home a lot. And I had been really irked at the fact that brands in beauty and fashion, just as a consumer, didn't feature anybody that looked like me in their marketing. And it's something that had annoyed me for about 10 years, like shopping in shops and being surrounded by imagery of young people. So in 2020, I just thought, you know what, I'm going to see, if I go public with my page, see if there's any other women that feel like this. Because I just thought it was really unacceptable. And I felt othered when I was a young woman, because I never saw anybody with my skin tone, I never saw anybody with my body type, I never saw anyone with my hair texture. And those boxes had been ticked, but now I'm a midlife woman, I'm back at square one again, not seeing myself. So I went online for that reason, and what happened very quickly was, because I had the full length silver hair, which really I wasn't thinking about when I did this, when I went public, there were a lot of women that were not able to get to salons, and so during lockdown they were growing their hair out. So I very quickly garnered a couple of thousand followers who mostly happened to be midlife women, because they saw my silver hair as being the end result. So and then what I was saying resonated, what I was talking about resonated, and so a community has kind of developed from there. So yeah, that was the trigger. The trigger really was, I'm a consumer and I'm, can I say pissed off?
You can say, we can swear
and
on the
I'm
podcast.
pissed off with being ignored by beauty and fashion brands. You know, like I shop, and still now there's loads of shops like, Nike and Adidas that are so youth focused that would never feature someone that looks like me in their marketing, even though we popularised them in the 80s, Run DMC singing about Adidas. So we just get sidelined because that's the focus. So it was just really annoying me. And maybe I was doing a bit more shopping during 2020, I don't know, but online shopping. But I think, so that was the trigger. That was the trigger.
And from there, within a matter of weeks, everything changed.
So
tell me about what that experience was like.
So within 4 weeks, I got approached by a number of model agencies, and I had had modelling experience prior to that. So I was stopped in the street in Portobello Road in 2019 by a casting agent who saw my hair. She literally, I just heard the screech of tyres, and she jumped out of the car and ran over to me. I thought she was a friend of my daughter's or something.
I was going to steal your bag.
And then she, so I did a job with her. So I had been on a billboard and everything, but got paid like £1,000 to sit on a sofa for a couple of hours, which was like, I don't know, that I've never earned that kind of money ever in my life. So I was like, I could maybe do this occasionally. And that was that though. I got that one job, and then and then another job. A friend of mine saw a casting call for a job for Sainsbury's 2 clothing. And she said, you should apply for this. You did the other one. It's good money. Why don't you do that? And so I did. So I had those 2 jobs under my belt, but wasn't thinking I'd ever be taken seriously as a model. They were really jobs for, regular person. They wanted somebody that wasn't a professional model. So it did come as a surprise, and my immediate response was, God, this is serious. I can't be a model. I'm not 6 foot, and all of those. That inner voice, that tells you can't do something because finds a million excuses why you can't. And then very quickly I was like, what the hell? Absolutely not. You've been complaining about a lack of representation. You're now being given the opportunity to be that representation that you feel needs to be there. You better say yes. So I did, and I've been busy ever since.
And the way that we sabotage ourselves, that's what I'm really curious about, and for the conversations I'm having on the podcast, what I want to kind of illuminate for the audience is we're all built like that, we're all wired like that. So for people that have achieved success, how have they kind of found a way past that negative thinking, past those doubts? And it sounds like you had a vision for the change that you wanted to make in the world that was more powerful than what was going on between your ears, if I put it like that. Is that right?
Absolutely. I think, I just overcame it because I knew that there was a need for it. And it gave me purpose, as cheesy as that sounds. It has purpose. And in fact, I hadn't realised until recently, throughout my career, every job that I've ever stayed in for any length of time has had purpose, and I hadn't realised that. Like in the 90s, I was a music journalist, and we covered what was called black music then. Now it's called urban music, because it was completely ignored by mainstream radio, and it was never marketed. So we created a magazine. I became deputy editor of that magazine, and I loved that time in my life. I got to travel and interview interesting people. And that had purpose. We were creating a platform for our music and a place where we could celebrate it. And then I went from there to working for Mobo. I got headhunted to work for Mobo. And again, at that time, Mobo was new, struggling, small team, with this one purpose of elevating and representing emerging talent in this country, and celebrating black music again, which was underrepresented in the charts, and the Brits weren't covering it back then. And Carnival, working at Carnival as well. I worked there at Mobo on and off whilst I had my kids as well, continued that relationship there. And then Carnival, Carnival had been so wronged by our media, to make a change there was huge. But I was never paid very well for any of these jobs, not paid particularly well, but that was never my drive. I realised that wasn't the thing that drove me. And so me doing this was kind of, no expectation, wasn't expecting it to be a job. It's my job now. It really was just about being loud.
But it's a job now, and you have a purpose.
Yes,
it's a different purpose, but equally powerful. And I suppose coming back to what we were thinking about earlier about what the next few years holds, it's doing jobs, modelling jobs, writing, whatever it might be that are in alignment with that purpose.
No, I'm definitely purpose driven for sure. And I think it's probably a lot to do with how I was raised as well, because I was very fortunate. I don't know if you've ever heard of somebody called Darcus Howe, but he was an activist. So he kind of was the go-to voice for black people in this country. He had his own television program for a period of time called, I think it was in the 90s, called Devil's Advocate. But he was also a writer, an orator. He was an amazing man, and he lived downstairs from us. So we went to demonstrations like Black Lives Matter, the precursor to that. If there was a police brutality or anything within our community, I remember travelling to Bradford to demonstrate to get somebody out of jail, and I was 8 years old. So I come from that. That was the backdrop to my life. Steve McQueen's film, Mangrove. They were my family friends.
Wow.
I knew all of them. We went out, protesting outside of the Old Bailey and whatever. So I realised that was probably the beginnings of just this kind of drive to make a change or to have purpose, or it was just in me from a young age.
So one of the things I wanted to talk about was this concept of having a vision that's really powerful, that kind of has you get through the insecurities and the self-doubt. And for me and your story, kind of the biggest point of that was the M&S shoot.
Yes,
Which I imagine must have been absolutely terrifying.
Yes, it was. It was. I didn't sleep barely slept the night before. Tanked up on Rescue Remedy. I think I drank it. And just, the run up to it was terrifying, and I was like, I don't know if I even want to do this.
And what was the thought process? Because obviously, for those that don't know, it was a lingerie shoot. So you're in your underwear.
Yes,
or M&S underwear.
Yeah.
So what was that little voice in your head telling you?
Just don't do it, which was a go-to for things like that. Like I've always been in the background. Like every job I've ever done has been me in the background. Right. When I was at Carnival, they called me the puppeteer because I was in the background making things happen. Yeah. Never wanted to be up front. I used to write speeches for public speakers, so camera shy. Like there's very few images of me. So completely out of my comfort zone. But I just knew I needed to push through that. I just knew I was lucky to be given this opportunity, was grateful for it. And just had to push through all of those insecurities and just see what was on the other side. And it turns out that once I'd done that, I think I said to you earlier that, there was literally just before going on set, trembling, not being able to even find my mouth with a glass of water because I was that terrified. But at the same time, my inner voice was telling me I wasn't worthy of this opportunity even. How did this even happen? How am I even here? Yeah. To just saying the moment where I had to step onto set and then just owning it. I don't know where it came from. They were a great team. I was in a huge studio, mostly men on the crew. So I felt so vulnerable, but for some reason that vulnerability just shifted into empowerment. I don't know where that came from, why that energy happened. I asked them to play soca music, which got me dancing in a kind of zone. I just went for it and really enjoyed the experience. It was really liberating. I felt euphoric afterwards. I felt a sense of achievement, but more importantly, it was a personal thing for me in that moment. It was like just really liberating. I can't even begin to tell you, because it was huge for me. I spent years like worrying about, I'm the friend that wears a sarong on the beach. I'm not out there like that. I hide from cameras, all the rest of it. But it was just the most liberating experience. And I thought, because it was one of the first jobs that I did as a model, I was like, well, this, on a personal level, this is, this is good. Yeah. This is a good thing. But the realization once I had done it, this is if we're talking on a personal level. I mean, obviously the whole thing was about representation and me feeling, a sense of purpose, which got me in that space in the first place. But then once I was there, it was there was a sense of achievement afterwards. And I don't know how, I guess it was make or break. It's like, what am I going to do? I'm on the set now, there's this expectation. Yeah. I'm not going to curl up into a ball and, and just all say, I can't do this, guys, and walk off. I had to go for it. So it was like jumping off a cliff or whatever, just taking the plunge, or out of it, skydiving. Yeah. That's what it felt like. Yeah. And then really enjoying it and it being really exhilarating. Yeah. That's exactly what it felt like. And you said you wanted to find out what was on the other side. Yeah. What did you find out about yourself? Just that I can that I can push myself through those things that held me back when I was younger, because I had opportunity. I was approached when MTV first launched in Camden. That was when I was a music journalist, and I'd done a little bit of telly and was really uncomfortable doing talking head stuff, talking about black music. And that was probably the seeds for me really not wanting to be in front of camera. Like, I was nervous, I didn't enjoy the experience at all. Then MTV approached me and asked me if I'd like to be a presenter, and part of me was like, oh my God, amazing opportunity. But that I managed. Well, what happened was I just got imposter syndrome, and that was overridden by that. Like, just no. What are they seeing in me? Yeah. I can't. how do they think I'm even capable of coming in for a screen test? Like, no. So I just shut that down.
And how old were you at that point in time?
I actually was pregnant with my first child. Nobody knew at that point. So that was my excuse for not doing it, was I'm pregnant.
Yeah.
So I was 29.
Yeah, more than 20 years ago.
Hold on, no, I was older. I had my first at 31, so I was 30.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was 30, but I think people thought I was younger.
Yeah, It's amazing. So it's taken you 25 years, more or less, for you to be the person that is not the puppeteer, but is you're making things happen in front of the camera now.
Yeah, and it's. I did always wonder as well how, if I'd have said yes to that opportunity, how different my life would have been. So I always had that. I'm so glad I didn't, because I probably wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now. Yeah. And this has just been the best time. It really has, like, just the most amazing ride.
and it's incredible to me, and your story resonates with me a little bit in that I've always been the person behind the camera, as it were, in the background with a small voice, not wanting to be visible. And now, I'm doing a podcast. And I said to you earlier, I haven't had so much fun professionally ever.
Yeah.
And it's because I've got through those insecurities, I've got through those limiting beliefs.
Yeah.
And it's liberating is the word I always come back to.
But also, I think by staying in the background, I think you learn more. I really do. I think if you're up front, you're not seeing everything that's going on behind the scenes necessarily, because you're the face of it all. So I feel like I benefited from that period in the background.
There's a place for that until that being in the background is holding you back from doing something that you really want to do.
Yeah. It's great that you're doing this.
Yeah,
that's so cool.
I'm loving it. So if you could design the perfect fashion shoot for you, which represented everything that you're passionate about,
do you know?
And the work, there's no budget. You can choose whatever you want. How would you design that?
Do I have to be in it?
No.
Oh, right. Okay. I mean, I love intergenerational advertising, like where because I love being around young people as much as I love being around older people. I obviously like being around my peers as well, but I feel like there's so much to be learned from elders. I would hope to be called one day an elder, and from young people, and that interaction is really is a beautiful thing. I just think I hope that they learn from me as well. So for me, just to have age be something that is not really, if you've got intergenerational cast, then age is not really the issue. You're just there as people, just wearing clothes, maybe in a nice climate somewhere, maybe somewhere exotic. But where age is just not the thing, and we're just looking at people interacting with each other, wearing clothes, if that's what the advert is for. So I think if we get to the point where it's not such a statement, and that I'd like that, where it's just people. Yeah, that would be nice.
That's a beautiful picture you've painted. You've kind of pushed through your insecurities so much. I wonder, is there a further? One of the coaches I work with sometimes talks about the human experience where your ceiling becomes your floor, and you can see possibilities that you couldn't see before.
Yes.
So in terms of where your possibilities or where your edge is now, what does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, I do feel like I'm sort of peeping over at the moment. But as I say, nothing's sort of strategic. I mean, I like the idea of maybe living somewhere with a different climate and resetting and restarting and pivoting again in some way. I mean, I'd love to have a donkey sanctuary in, I don't know, rural Italy or something. Do you know what I mean? Something like that. I'd love and live out my elder years doing something like that. That really appeals to me.
Yeah, that's another different type of purpose.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. No, I'd love to be the Brigitte Bardot of donkeys. The donkeys.
Okay, let's try not to have that headline on the podcast for social media. The Brigitte Bardot of the donkey world. Mia, it's been such a pleasure talking to you today. I want to end with one question that I always like to end these podcasts with, which is if you could think about a person, a living person that you would want to see interviewed on this podcast, could be anyone, who would that be?
A living person?
Yeah.
See, I would have said Cicely Tyson if it wasn't a living person. A living person, And the theme is about...
Okay, well, who's your role model?
Do you know what? It's crazy because it would have to be somebody political. But living, that's really tricky. Yeah. I love James Baldwin, Maya Angelou, people like that.
Yeah.
But I just feel like there's not anybody
which is really
maybe Angela Davis, she's still going.
Yeah.
I do feel like we don't really appreciate people, we appreciate them more once they've gone.
Yeah.
And Angela Davis is
but that's really
an
illustrative.
amazing
There's no one really that's coming to mind.
From my generation that I can... I'm going to think of a million when I walk through the door. I know it. Because that's just how it
I'm sure, but maybe that's
works.
reflective of the fact that there are still not enough role models in the world.
Yeah, I can't think of any.
Okay.
Can you think of anybody, Carmi? Who do I talk about that I really admire that's of my generation? Yeah. I was lucky enough to meet James Baldwin twice and Maya Angelou.
Okay.
Yeah. So, yeah, I can say I've been in their company, which is quite an amazing thing.
Yeah.
I can't think of them here.
Don't worry.
That's really bad.
That's okay.
If I think of somebody, I'll let you know. Maybe we can have it in the caption afterwards.
Okay. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you. And it feels to me like there's so much more that we could talk about. So,
I'll have to come back for part two, and then I'll have an answer for that final question.
It's a deal. It's a deal.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.